An icy drizzle fell on the city as dawn broke over the horizon. In the heart of downtown, the imposing glass and steel headquarters of the Central City Bank loomed like a modern-day fortress. Every morning, hundreds of employees arrived with steady determination, unaware that this particular day would irrevocably alter their lives, forever etched into both bank lore and urban legend. Among the dedicated staff working behind closed doors and polished counters was an unassuming man named Kevin Murdoch. Kevin, a mid-level manager with a quiet demeanor, was known for his routine punctuality, his conservative approach to banking, and his fierce loyalty to the institution. Yet beneath his mild-mannered exterior, Kevin harbored doubts about the bank's leadership and its secretive dealings, a quiet rebellion awaiting the moment to break free. Across town, an unexpected visitor was preparing for a day of high stakes that would twist destiny in unpredictable ways. Nadine Adebayo, a seasoned entrepreneur with a reputation that spanned continents, had spent decades building empires unseen by the average person. Adopting a disguise as an undercover investigator working for a rival regulatory body, Nadine infiltrated various sectors all over the country. This time, her path converged with the Central City Bank. Unbeknownst to the lower-level employees or even most of the upper echelon, Nadine was not merely on a fact-finding mission, she was, in a twist of fate, the true owner of the bank. This revelation lay hidden behind layers of legal intricacies, careful manipulations, and financial subterfuge orchestrated over years. As Nadine stepped through the revolving doors in a simple yet elegant coat, her confident stride belied the weight of the secret that separated her true identity from the persona she had carefully crafted. Inside the pristine lobby, the bank hummed with the steady rhythm of commerce and routine. Vaulted ceilings soared above sleek marble floors while soft instrumental music played in the background, providing an air of refined sophistication. Kevin made his way to his office, his mind already occupied with end-of-day reports. He was unaware that around him, events were spiraling into a narrative of deception, misunderstanding, and passion. At the reception desk, a friendly bank clerk exchanged pleasantries with a well-dressed individual who wore large sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. The individual, who exuded mystery and understated authority, was indeed Nadine, but in her undercover guise, she was known only as Ms. A. Black, a consultant anonymously dispatched to audit internal security protocols. Kevin's day unfolded in a predictably mundane fashion, fluctuating between routine meetings and the steady hum of daily transactions. A slight furrow in his brow indicated that something was weighing on his mind, a gnawing question of integrity and fairness that had been building over the last few months. Across the hall, in a conservative meeting room, discussions over profit margins and regulatory compliance were interrupted by a piercing shout that shattered the careful facade of normalcy. "That man!" cried out one of the security staff, pointing a trembling finger in Kevin's direction. The entire room froze, some exchanged bewildered glances while others frantically began to gather their belongings. Kevin's heart pounded as he made his way to the source of the disturbance. In the bank's lobby, chaos reigned, fueled by the rapid spread of confusion and the surreal nature of the unfolding scenario. A group of uniformed bank security personnel, notorious for their swift execution of company protocols, had overtaken a corner of the floor. It was here that a scandalous act was taking shape, an altercation that would soon expose a tangled web of identity, power, and authority. As an officer snatched Kevin, the charged atmosphere of betrayal and anger mingled with perplexity. The uniformed staff, empowered by their interpretation of authority, believed they had identified a saboteur within their ranks. Their eyes burned with indignation even as suspicions festered that this could be part of an elaborate act of fraud. Before Kevin could muster an explanation, a rapid sequence of events unfolded. His protests were cut short by the stinging impact of raised hands across his face, a misinterpreted act of discipline that the bank's protocol crudely termed swift resolution. The surrealness of what was happening did not escape Kevin's mind. His vision blurred as he clutched his cheek where a distinct imprint of a slap seared its mark. In the midst of the uproar, Kevin found himself in the center of a misunderstanding so profound that it challenged his very identity within the bank. The security team, operating under orders that blurred justice and self-righteous zeal, then proceeded to cuff him. Whispers and murmurs swept through the crowd, the echo of disbelief melding with the heartbeat of a city that never slept. But beneath the clamor of accusation and the staccato rhythm of overwhelming authority, a silent observer noted every detail with unnerving precision. Nadine, disguised as Ms. Black, watched the unfolding scene from across the lobby. The meticulous strategist in her appreciated the irony and gravity of the situation. Though she had come with her own agenda of exposing systemic weaknesses, she could not help but feel a twinge of regret as an innocent man was caught in the tide of misdirected justice. With careful deliberation, Nadine decided to intervene, believing that the layers of misunderstanding were far too deep to allow further harm. As she strode purposefully toward the commotion, every step resonated with the authority and empathy that had guided her through empires of financial power and political labyrinths. The corridors of power within the bank were more labyrinthine than anyone could have imagined. Hidden offices, confidential meeting rooms, and shadowy intersections of influence ensured that few were privy to the truth behind the institutional facade. Kevin, now barricaded in a temporary holding area, endured a tumultuous mixture of humiliation and despair. The once quiet and methodical manager now faced a barrage of hostile questions from his captors, each query punctuated by misguided fervor and the occasional burst of unrefined ire. In between harsh interrogations, he struggled to piece together the logic of the abrupt assault, the rapid escalation of actions that saw him branded as a rogue element. All he knew was that somewhere, deep within the corridors of institutional memory, a mistake had been made, a mistake that would soon come to light in the most unexpected of manners. Meanwhile, Nadine drew near to the scene with an air of quiet determination. Observing the chronology of events, she pieced together clues from the hurried glances of employees and the stuttered justifications of the security personnel. With a voice both calm and resolute, she interjected into the heated assembly, "Gentlemen, ladies, please, let us all pause and consider the situation logically." Her unexpected intervention silenced the murmurs for a heartbeat as all eyes turned to her. In that pause, the tension hung heavy in the air like a storm cloud on the brink of eruption. The bank's manager in charge of internal security, a stern woman with a reputation for uncompromising decisiveness, stepped forward, prompted by Nadine's measured tone. "Ms. Black," she said, her voice reflecting a blend of respect for authority and concern for procedure, "explain your presence here. We must know if you are associated with the investigation." Nadine's response was measured and empathetic as she explained the nature of her assignment. "I have been sent to review our security protocols, to ensure our policies are met efficiently and fairly. I am here to maintain the integrity of our institution." As the quiet ripple of understanding passed among the observers, the store of misinterpretations began to unravel in the subtle interplay of words and expressions. The stillness that succeeded Nadine's remarks was short-lived. The suspicion resonated among the staff like a dissonant chord in a meticulously composed symphony. With each subsequent sentence, the lines between prescribed duty and perceived betrayal became murkier. Behind closed eyes, Kevin, though temporarily silenced by the restraints of misunderstanding, hoped that reason might prevail over rash actions. Yet in the glare of institutional rigidity, hope was something treasured only by those who dared to dream anew. Kevin's struggle to reclaim his dignity, to be seen as a dedicated worker rather than a threat, was palpable in every silent plea that his eyes conveyed. The scene brimmed with emotion. Outrage tempered by guilt, authority clouded by uncertainty, and above all, the realization that truth is seldom straightforward in a labyrinth where power, deception, and ambition converge. As the minutes ticked by, the bank's manager summoned further staff to assist in de-escalating the burgeoning crisis. The entire episode, now echoing with the undercurrents of far deeper conflicts, demanded that every layer of the institution be questioned. Over the next tense hour, evidence began to surface that highlighted a sequence of administrative errors and internal miscommunications far graver than anyone had initially surmised. Comments made in low voices, hurried exchanges behind locked doors, and encrypted emails that hinted at ulterior motives contributed to a cinematic narrative of systemic failures. Amid this unfolding tapestry, a critical twist emerged, one that would shake the very foundations of Central City Bank. Code words and subtle allusions suggested an internal power struggle, a battle by unseen forces within the institution, directed by individuals whose identities were once considered sacrosanct. Kevin's unjust treatment, his public humiliation, now appeared to be a mere symptom of a greater malaise, an institutional paralysis that stifled equitable dialogue and embraced retributive discipline. At that moment, the voice of Nadine rang out clearly. "I insist on a full review of today's events," she declared, her tone imbued with the weight of personal authority and corporate acumen. "We cannot, in good conscience, allow mistakes and misjudgments to torment the lives of our colleagues, no matter how innocently they might have been entangled." Her statement halted all further actions. Even the security chief, whose eyes had hardened at Kevin's misfortunes, hesitated as he weighed the implications of her words. In that heavy silence, the path forward was reimagined, as both the bank's leadership and its inadvertent scapegoats awaited a reckoning, a moment when truth would cast aside the veil of misunderstandings. The ensuing proceedings were marked by a disciplined fusion of fact-finding and deep introspection. In a remarkable turn, a small but dedicated investigative team, reined in by Nadine's calm insistence on fairness, was assembled. Behind the walls of a secure conference room, Kevin was allowed to speak, his voice trembling but resolute as he recounted the events that had transformed his ordinary day into a nightmare. He recalled not only the abrupt slap, which had been as much a symbol of misplaced authority as it was an act of unbridled impulsiveness, but also the cold, unbending gaze of those who had once been his comrades in the pursuit of financial integrity. His narrative painted a picture of an infrastructure failing to protect its employees, with protocols and procedures interacting in ways that blurred lines between discipline and assault. Every word Kevin spoke opened another door into the unspoken tension simmering beneath the polished veneer of the bank. His passionate retelling set in motion questions that rippled outward until they reached the highest echelons of command. Across the city, strange whispers began to manifest among high-ranking officials in corporate boardrooms. There were murmurs of a mysterious benefactor pulling strings behind the curtains of Central City Bank, a benefactor whose true identity would upend everything. It wasn't long before the whispers evolved into a full-blown inquiry. The board, initially frozen in bureaucratic inertia, now found itself compelled to act decisively. Nadine, whose expert handling of the situation had won many silent nods of approval from seasoned executives, was summoned to a high-level meeting. There, patterns emerged, unexplained financial fluctuations, irregular investments, and administrative oversights all pointed to a deliberate orchestration of chaos from within. The revelation that the very individual who now questioned the bank's security was, in fact, its hidden owner, lent an otherworldly dimension to an already convoluted case. The boardroom was a place of lofty ambition and deeply rooted ambition. As heated debates spiraled into abstract philosophical inquiries about the nature of transparency and trust in modern institutions, one question remained unassailably clear: how could a system designed to safeguard economic stability and human dignity allow itself to be so easily exploited? The answer, as slowly unveiled, was as unexpected as it was humbling. A long, well-concealed stratagem lay at the heart of the matter, a secret that turned the roles of perpetrator and victim on their head. Nadine's true identity, once meticulously hidden by layers of legal red tape and corporate subterfuge, was now one of the bank's most guarded secrets. Her inheritance of the bank, passed down through generations in a lineage of visionary entrepreneurs, had been meticulously camouflaged to protect her from those who might leverage it for personal gain. This revelation, unearthed by an ironic twist of fate, would not only exonerate Kevin but also expose the very fault lines within the institution's governance. As the crisis within the bank's walls deepened, the full tapestry of events began to take shape. The earlier misjudgment that had led to Kevin's wrongful arrest and publicly humiliating slap was soon understood to be the culmination of a series of orchestrated diversions designed by a rival faction within the bank. This faction, seemingly driven by a lust for internal power and a desire to undermine long-standing practices, had orchestrated what they believed to be a cleansing act, a purge that would clear the way for a new order. Their plan, however, was fatally flawed. The human element, unpredictable and unscripted, threw their calculations into disarray. Kevin, with his unassuming nature and unwavering dedication, became the unwilling martyr in a war waged with unchecked impulses. Nadine's intervention, guided by the steady hand of destiny, was the fulcrum on which the entire debacle pivoted. In saving Kevin from an unjust fate, she exposed the inherent dangers of power when wielded without empathy and understanding. After hours of negotiations, confessions, and painstaking cross-examination of internal memos, the bank's governing council decided to take drastic measures. It was in a moment of decisive clarity that Nadine, now fully recognized as the true owner, stepped forward and assumed leadership of the institution. With calculated resolve, she declared that no individual, no matter how zealous in their misguided sense of duty, should be allowed to intimidate, harm or undermine the spirit of service that the bank was meant to embody. Her speech, delivered before a stunned assembly of executives and staff, was both an apology to Kevin and a promise to reform the system from within. "We stand here today on the precipice of a new era," she pronounced, her voice ringing out with unyielding conviction. "An era where justice is tempered with compassion, where truth is the standard, and where every employee's voice is valued. I promise you that we will rebuild not only our financial systems but also the trust that binds us as a community." The crisis, though deeply disruptive, had evolved into something far greater than a single act of misdirected aggression. It had become a symbol, a mirror held up to a modern institution, reflecting not only the imperfections of bureaucratic systems but also the resilience of the human spirit. In the days that followed, as Nadine methodically sent letters of apology, reinstated staff members, and initiated sweeping reforms, whispers turned into conversations and murmurs into a chorus of hope. Kevin was released from his temporary detention, his honor gradually being restored through a transparent review and a heartfelt public acknowledgement of the errors committed. His face, once marred by the indignity of a public slap, now shone with a quiet dignity as he embraced a future filled with promise and redemption. Meanwhile, staff members who had been complicit in the rash decisions re-evaluated their own roles within the institution, many choosing to step forward and advocate for change. The incident had taught them that while hierarchical power should be respected, it must never be elevated above human decency and empathy. As days turned to weeks, the bank underwent a metamorphosis. Nadine's leadership, once questioned by those who doubted her undisclosed legacy, now ushered in a regime of transparency and accountability that spread like wildfire. Investigations into internal misconduct resulted in comprehensive policy overhauls, enhanced training programs, and mechanisms that ensured even the smallest voice was heard. The very DNA of the bank was rewritten. Every memo, every policy directive, and every piece of internal communication was reformed in the spirit of fairness and mutual respect. The news of these sweeping changes reverberated through the city, attracting attention from regulators, the press, and even rival institutions. In quiet whispers at high society events and in the boardrooms of corporate giants, many lauded the Central City Bank as a model of corporate reinvention, a phoenix rising from the ashes of bureaucratic failure, propelled by the unexpected heroism of an overlooked employee and the visionary guidance of its rightful owner. Yet, even as the institution celebrated its rebirth, a lingering question captivated the minds of many: what had truly motivated the chain of events that had led to such transformative change? In clandestine interviews and heartfelt confessions, former members of the rogue faction admitted their desperation to hold on to power in a system that was rapidly becoming anachronistic. Their actions, though morally questionable, were symptomatic of a broader culture that had long preached authority without accountability. They had been blinded by ambition, unwilling to accept that power is a shared responsibility rather than a divine right. With Nadine at the helm and Kevin's unintentional martyrdom as the catalyst, a new paradigm had been born, one that embraced both the legacy of the past and the promise of a fairer, more just future. In the final analysis, the journey of that fateful day became a parable of modern society, a vivid reminder that no matter how deeply entrenched systems of power might become, they can be challenged by courage, introspection, and the willingness to see beyond the surface. The slap, once an emblem of misguided retribution, transformed into a symbol of the reckoning that could bring down even the mightiest of institutions. Kevin's story, though marred by pain and injustice, evolved into a testament to human resilience, a beacon for anyone who had ever been wronged in silence. Nadine's transformation from a mysterious consultant to the rightful owner of the bank not only reversed the tides of fate but also redefined leadership in a context where empathy and transparency reigned supreme. And so, as Central City Bank entered a new chapter of reform and reconciliation, the lessons of that turbulent day continued to echo. At every level of the institution, from the meticulous vaults where every coin was counted to the executive offices where decisions that shaped entire lives were made, the refrain was the same: true power lies not in the force of one's hand, but in the strength of one's heart. In the interplay of authority and accountability, in the delicate balancing act between discipline and empathy, a new narrative had been written. It spoke of redemption, of transformative compromise, and of the enduring belief that every individual deserves justice and respect, no matter how invisible their struggles might be. In personal reflection, Kevin often revisited the pivotal moments that had redefined his life. In the quiet solitude of his modest apartment, he would replay the day in his mind like a film that was both agonizing and liberating. Each flash of memory, from the shock of the initial slap to the unexpected kindness of Nadine, served as a reminder that even in our darkest moments, there is the potential for rebirth. Though his path had been marred by institutional betrayal, it had also been illuminated by the compassionate intervention that had set him free. For Kevin, the experience was not merely an episode of personal trial, it was a profound journey into the very heart of what it means to be human in a world fraught with uncertainty. His newfound resolve to advocate for fairness and justice permeated every aspect of his existence, inspiring colleagues, neighbors, and even members of rival establishments who had once been cynical about change. Equally, Nadine's days grew busier as she relentlessly pursued initiatives that would cement the new ethical framework of the bank. She established open forums where employees could voice concerns without fear of reprisal, instituted policies guaranteeing equal opportunity and respect, and fostered partnerships with local community organizations that championed financial literacy and social justice. Her personal interactions with the staff were marked by warmth and authenticity, bridging the gap that had once separated leadership from the everyday struggles of the workforce. Though her true identity remained a secret to only a few, her actions resonated with the broader ideals of accountability and transparency. In quiet meetings and sprawling public addresses alike, Nadine emphasized that the bank's renewed strength would derive from its most valuable asset, its people. The legacy of the past was not erased but rather transformed into a foundation upon which a brighter, more inclusive future could be built. Slowly, the once contentious hallways of Central City Bank gave way to a new rhythm, one that emphasized collaboration over hierarchy, empathy over obligation, and community over isolation. The story of the fateful slap turned out not to be a parable of reckless authority, but rather a catalyst for systemic change. At each stage of investigation, each meeting convened in hushed tones, and each decisive speech delivered by Nadine, the institution was reborn through sheer transparency and unwavering commitment to justice. Even the board members, whose once inscrutable faces had hidden impassive bureaucracy, now experienced an awakening, a recognition that true leadership could only flourish when rooted in ethical clarity. Their archaic understanding of power dissipated as the bank embraced modern principles of corporate governance, transcending the limitations of its previous culture of intimidation and suppression. With the public now aware of the scandal and the ensuing reforms, Central City Bank became a symbol of hope and renewal to many. The media narrative shifted from tales of intimidation and abuse of power to stories of redemption and transformation. Interviews with longtime employees described a newfound solidarity and trust. In a heartfelt interview for a leading news outlet, one veteran teller recalled, "I always believed that our bank was more than just a collection of rules and ledgers. Today, I truly see that strength in the unity of its people. We are no longer afraid to speak up, because we know that we are heard." Such testimonials wove their way into the bank's storied history, teaching future generations that the courage to stand up against injustice, regardless of the immediate outcomes, can lead to a renaissance of values, both in corporate life and in the broader community. As the months passed, the full impact of Nadine's takeover and the subsequent upheaval was felt not only within the bank walls but also along the city's economic arteries. Bank employees, empowered by a newfound sense of purpose, began to advocate for better working conditions and fairer treatment. Community outreach programs blossomed, infusing the local economy with a spirit of cooperation and mutual progress. The process of reform, though challenging, became a collective journey. A tapestry of individual stories interwoven with the broader narrative of institutional accountability. Kevin himself, once seen as a symbol of the bank's misfortune, emerged as a champion for ethical reform. His efforts to create support networks for his colleagues and to champion policy changes within the institution earned him widespread respect. Eventually, his name became synonymous with resilience, a mnemonic device for the idea that even in the darkest moments of bureaucratic overreach, the potential for renewal lies waiting to be awakened. In a final twist of fate that no one could have foreseen, the bank's newfound transparency and fiscal stability attracted international attention. Investors from around the globe, impressed by the institution's bold move toward ethical reform, began to channel resources into the central city bank. The influx of capital not only bolstered the bank's balance sheets but also reinforced the message that transparency and accountability were not weaknesses, but rather the cornerstones of sustainable success. Through a series of calculated investments and strategic partnerships, the bank was poised to become a leading example of how financial institutions could harmonize profit with purpose. In boardrooms far beyond the city, conversations about the Central City Bank and its remarkable transformation reverberated like a rallying cry for change. It was said that in this one institution, the combined forces of courage, resilience, and a willingness to evolve had rewritten the rules of modern banking. In the months that followed, a celebratory air descended once again upon the institution, even as employees quietly acknowledged the scars of the past. At an annual gala organized to commemorate the bank's rebirth, Kevin stood at the podium to offer a toast, his voice resonating with gratitude and quiet strength. "Let today be a tribute to every person who ever spoke up in the face of injustice," he declared, his eyes shining with the reflection of hope. "Our journey reminds us that even when mistakes are made, the spirit of redemption remains within us, waiting for the moment to emerge. May our renewed commitment to truth guide us for years to come." His words were met with a heartfelt round of applause, each clap echoing the promise of a future built on fairness and mutual respect. As the gala wound down, Nadine, now recognized unequivocally as the bank's rightful leader, mingled with the employees and board members alike. In quieter moments away from the public eye, she reflected on the twists of fate that had brought her back to this institution, an amalgamation of time, destiny, and an unwavering belief in justice. Her heart was heavy with the memories of past betrayals, yet buoyed by the knowledge that her decisive actions had set in motion a ripple of positive change. In whispered conversations, staff members shared how her genuine care had transformed them from fearful subjects of tyranny into proud guardians of their own destiny. And so, amid the glitter of chandeliers and the soft laughter of newfound camaraderie, the Central City Bank celebrated not just a rebirth of its corporate identity but also the collective transformation of its soul. With every passing day, the bank's history was rewritten, each entry a testament to transformation, tenacity, and the unyielding spirit of those who dared to stand for what is right. The story of that fateful day, of misplaced authority, of a slap that ignited a revolution, and of a leader who emerged through the crucible of injustice, evolved into a revered legend. Its legacy was not confined to broken rules and administrative errors but shone as an enduring reminder of how even a single act of compassion, strategically timed, can change the entire course of history. In the years that followed, as the bank flourished and expanded its outreach programs to serve a diverse and vibrant community, the tale became a cornerstone of its cultural heritage. New hires were taught the narrative of the Day of Reckoning, not as a historical account of misfortune, but as a blueprint for how ethics, empathy, and accountability could transform the landscape of modern finance. Every corner of the bank, from its polished marble foyer to the confidential boardrooms, echoed with the spirit of positive change. Every employee's smile was a silent ode to the communal strength that had emerged from adversity. And for those who had suffered unjustly, like Kevin, the recollections of that day served as a constant reminder that change is possible, even in the darkest moments of turmoil. As twilight settled over the bank on one clear evening years later, Kevin strolled through the now familiar corridors, his every step resonating with the wisdom of hard-won experience. The once painful memory of that controversial slap had transformed into a personal anthem of perseverance. In quiet moments, he marveled at how unexpected events, the brief, shocking collision of misguided authority and hidden truth, could lead to the most profound social reforms. It was a reminder that within every story of human conflict and institutional failure, there was the timeless possibility of renewal. With hope as his constant companion, Kevin carried the lessons of his ordeal like a badge of honor, eternally grateful for the chance to witness the transformative power of truth and redemption. That evening was a fitting tribute to a legacy that had been forged in fire and tempered by the collective will of a courageous community. The Central City Bank, once a colloquial symbol of bureaucratic excess, had become a beacon of progressive leadership, its narrative resonating far beyond the city limits. It was the story of an institution that recognized the value of individual dignity above hierarchical might, the saga of a man who, through his ordeal, awakened a movement of reform, and above all, the chronicle of a remarkable woman who dared to reclaim what was rightfully hers. In that timeless moment, as the stars glittered overhead like secrets waiting to be told, the bank and its people looked forward with a steadfast belief in a better tomorrow, a future where every voice mattered and every heart could contribute to the grand narrative of justice. So ended the tumultuous chapter of mistaken identity, misguided aggression, and the heroic reclamation of justice, a story that defied expectations and transformed a cold, calculated bureaucracy into a warm, vibrant community. The echoes of that fateful day continued to inspire, long after the memory of the arrest and the slap had faded from the immediate present. They served as a reminder that even the simplest acts, whether a shocking slap or a resolute declaration, could set into motion the events that forever change lives. The lessons learned stretched far beyond the confines of any single bank. They were a mirror reflecting the infinite capacity of the human spirit to evolve, to forgive, and to ultimately triumph over the forces that would see us confined by our past mistakes. And so, as the city continued its endless dance between ambition and humility, the story of Central City Bank became an enduring legend, a narrative inscribed not only on the walls of a building but also in the hearts of all who understood that authority must always be balanced with compassion, wisdom with understanding, and power with responsibility. In the annals of corporate history, it found its place as an epic saga of transformation, a call to arms for anyone who had ever been oppressed by the misuse of power, and a beacon of hope that change, no matter how long overdue, was always within reach. In the end, what had begun as an episode marked by a rash, inexplicable act of violence had blossomed into the catalyst for one of the bank's greatest renaissances. Kevin, Nadine, and every individual who had contributed to that historic metamorphosis emerged into a future defined not by the scars of the past but by the bright promise of a reformed present. Their journey, filled with trials, revelations, and ultimately redemption, became the legacy of Central City Bank, and a timeless narrative that would never be forgotten, echoing as an eternal testament to the triumph of truth, empathy, and unwavering resolve.